Okay, let me see here. 1, 2, 3. Do we have Rosie? I don't see Rosie. Has anybody heard from her? Let's wait 1 minute here. Corinne, could you send Rosie the new link or the link to the meeting? I will also.
There's Rosie.
Hello, present.
Hi. Oh, there you are. Hi. Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Good morning, everybody. Could we do a roll call, please?
Chair Fletcher,
Here.
Vice Chair Oligato,
Present.
Commissioner Kaufman,
Here.
Commissioner Islam,
Present.
Commissioner Keener.
Here.
Chair, all commissioners are present. Quorum is established. Good
Thank
morning.
you.
I'm Corinne, everybody. Bailey's on vacation.
Thanks, Corinne.
Thank you.
Approval of the minutes, the September 16 minutes. I have a couple of small revisions. Item number 5, line 3, he shared his criticisms. Can we change that to reflections instead of criticisms? And Commissioner Kaufman, bullet item number 2 under Tom Keeney's notes says calculations should use a global warming potential factor of 3, as was endorsed by the IPCC 6th assessment report. Is that accurate to your knowledge?
It depends what you mean by accurate. So I think in terms of what was said at the meeting, I think the minutes are accurate. I think there was a misunderstanding of why I used the factor of 2. I had used it to be consistent with the calculator he had previously used, which was a factor of 2. But I think in terms of minutes, this does capture what he said.
Do you want to edit that bullet at all based on what you said? We can come back to that while you think about it.
We can just add, rather than 2 as used by Commissioner Kaufman, to be consistent with his prior testimony's calculations. I don't know.
Yeah, so
Something like that.
replacing rather than 2 with to be consistent with his calculations as used by Commissioner Kaufman.
Yes, his
Yeah.
prior calculation. It was
Prior
2
calculation.
was what was used in the offset calculator that he had been using.
Okay,
But I think that was just a misunderstanding. But I do think that this is what was testified.
yeah, okay. On the second page, still on Tom Keeney's items. So the last line of the second bullet on the first page, if we go to the second page, we have written out the word 4. Can we just use the numeral 4 to be consistent with using numerals elsewhere? Item number 6, first bullet, is Maya's last name correctly spelled? DEVOOGD.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
It's pronounced DeVogue.
DeVogue, all right. Halfway down the page, second page, questions and comments that followed. Item number 1 begins Chair Fletcher. And if we go to the last line there, all the way to the end, it says Department of Planning and Permitting on if available. So strike the word on. And page 3, the bold questions and comments that followed. Bullet number 1, Vice Chair Allegado asked to Glenn, strike the word to. And that's all I have. Any other commissioners have comments? Edits? No. So I move we approve the minutes of September 16th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. So these minutes as amended are approved. I did not see a copy of October 28 minutes. I've been traveling, and so I quite easily, they could be sitting in my chaotic inbox right now. Did anybody else, we got a copy of those? McKenna's shaking her head. No. Okay, so we don't have any other minutes to approve. All right. Do we have any communications and correspondence from the public? You can open your video and we will call on you, or you can go into the chat.
I think this is correspondence that we received prior to the meeting, Chip.
Thank you, McKenna. And we didn't receive any that I'm aware of. Report on activities of the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resiliency. Director Gonzer, I presume since you're here, that's going to be your responsibility today.
Sure, thank you, Chip. Aloha and a peaceful Lono Ike Makahiki, and happy Thanksgiving season to all of you. Glad to be back and had a good chance to catch up on the previous meetings report out as well as the presentation. So if there's any additional questions, we can try to address those, but just some brief updates since the last meeting, just under a month ago. Primarily, I just wanted to start in the sort of reflection and season of, again, Thanksgivings and sort of restoration of spirit, mind, and soul. You know, our VISTA program, since we launched it in 2018, we've hosted more than 40 AmeriCorps VISTA service members across 7 city agencies, and they've invested so much in our office, our respective offices, and the community generally. And you know, we also recognize that it's not just CCSR vistas and it's not just city vistas, as we saw last month with 2 presentations from the state's cohort, the Climate Ready Oahu Vista cohort. They've really stepped up and you know, lived to the mission of public service. And what we wanted to do is share with the broader community something that is both a work product of one of the vistas, but also a promotional thing, since the VISTA program continues and we continue to seek both a VISTA leader currently, and then over the next several months, we'll have more opportunities as the positions in terms of service transition. This is what I just put in the chat, not to sort of live stream here today, but it's a tremendous 4-minute video that really provides a glimpse of the impact that city vistas have provided, but also I think the experience has provided them as individuals, both from Hawaii and from Oahu, as well as others that are from out of state. So I'll just leave that with you. Peruse and enjoy it at your leisure. But again, it really speaks volumes to the general community's awareness and the needs that we all face, and what you all as commissioners are supporting us and community to address these pressing climate change, sustainability, and resilience challenges. Very quickly now moving to some of the program and project updates. We've heard a lot on the climate action side, and one action in particular around building benchmarking, which at its basic is just the transparency and collection of information so that people can better understand and potentially make changes based on that information. We at the city are primarily interested in this so that we can have better access and better resource those property owners, building managers, or others that maybe need some additional support in thinking through how to reinvest and work through different efficiency partnerships and opportunities. Deputy Director Nicola Hedge provided an update to the Transportation, Sustainability, and Health Committee just 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago today, actually. And per resolution 21229, which passed through City Council at the start of October, CCSR is responsible for providing a report back to Council just to provide additional insight in terms of where the policy development is going. So it's both a building benchmarking policy and a program that would ultimately get established. There's been a lot of really positive feedback from the initial stakeholder engagement so far. More to come through the month of December into January. And then for those that are interested, just to keep it on your radar, we now have 2 open houses scheduled in January. The first on January the 20th at 2 p.m. and then the second on January 26th at 6 p.m. And then on the adaptation side, the Project Climate Ready Oahu, which we've provided a couple of updates throughout this calendar year. It's been a while since we convened that project advisory group. We do have a community advisory hui. The last meeting was back in January, and obviously there's been a lot of transition. The work has progressed, but we're very excited to be getting back together with them on the 7th between 4 and 6 p.m. And they've been a tremendous resource at different decision points. It's not just a forum to replicate the community engagement, but it is serving that advisory role as we think about different trajectories or where certain tasks may take us. And then for that project, through some of our stakeholder engagement, obviously through a COVID virtual environment, it hasn't been wholly satisfying the kinds of engagement that we've been able to do, which is one of the additional reasons to have the community advisory hui. But we're pleased that we submitted a competitive application for some additional community engagement funding. It's actually a grant coming from the American Cities Climate Challenge, not directly to us, but to a community-based organization that we partnered with to help us think through how to do better on the ground engagement. So we are partnering with Malama Learning Center, who will help us be a node to connect with other community-based organizations in specific geographies that to date, our engagement information is telling us we're lacking in terms of being able to connect with people in those places. So we're looking forward to that work really ramping up at the start of the new year. And then lastly, just sharing some personal internal CCSR family building. We have seen such tremendous transition within the office since the start of the new year. Different program managers coming on at different points in time, different vistas coming on at different points in time, bidding folks aloha like Chris just a couple of weeks ago, Lala 2 months ago, and everywhere in between. We also needed to do some of our own team building and just sharing out with you all that, since September, we've really been ramping up, staying connected as individuals and members across our team with a half day of team building back in September. But most recently, after Veterans Day on the 12th, we were up at Camp Palehua for some of our own strategy and action planning. We know that things like the resilience strategy and the climate action plan, and then the forthcoming Climate Ready Oahu really set what we need to do. But certainly we need to reassess our own capacities, reassess resources, and then use that strategy and that intention about how we can remain focused, effective, and impactful, and then hope to use that to communicate with community about why we may say no to some opportunities, why we may focus on certain things at different points in time, and then really hope to continue to communicate that with City Council, with Mayor and the Managing Director, et cetera. The other nice thing when we were up there, up Mauka 2 weeks ago, we also did a service learning opportunity to hear from Malama Learning Center and Pauline Sato in particular. And as someone that doesn't get out of the office enough, it was just a tremendous opportunity to be quite far away, almost as far away as you can be from the Fosse Municipal Building, and really getting to reconnect with our team, which again, I'm sure everyone across the board is seeking those personal connections, and even meeting environments like this don't always give us that immediacy that I think we're all kind of hungry for, and hopefully can continue to do safely as things like vaccines and boosters remain available to us. So in closing, just generally a mahalo to our community partners, our government colleagues that are joining us here on the agenda today, and to you all, our city climate change commissioners, for your continued commitment to this important cause. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Matt. That was amazing. That was very inspiring. Thank you for all that. Some wonderful thoughts. Commissioners? Okay. So we're up to item 6 on the agenda. And we are very lucky to have with us Justine Nihipali, Planning Program Manager with the Hawaii Coastal Zone Management Program. She's going to give us an update on their activities. Justine, I want to thank you on behalf of all of us for spending some time with us. So the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Chair Fletcher and Commissioners. Justine Nihipali, I'm pleased to be here with you today. As Chair Fletcher mentioned, I am the state's Office of Planning and Sustainable Development Planning Program Manager for the State Coastal Zone Management Program. I've been asked to very quickly speak about some of the changes that occurred recently relating to Chapter 205A and some of the other state legislation that's passed for state climate law. First, I'll talk about Act 16, which passed in the legislative session of 2020, which amended Chapter 205A, which is the Coastal Zone Management Law, for the purpose of mitigating the impacts of coastal hazards on coastal development, and also enhances beach protection. There were 4 main amendments to the law. The first is that there was an amendment to the list of what is considered development and not development. The minimum shoreline setback was increased from 20 feet to 40 feet. There was an addition of sea level rise to the definition of coastal hazards, and there was also an addition of the definition of beach to enhance beach protection that was added. And lastly, there's a restriction or prohibition of shoreline hardening structures for private property at sites with beaches. So our first change was amendments to development. Basically what that means is that except for when it's triggered by cumulative impact or significant environmental effect as determined by the County Planning Department, development still does not include the following, which is demolition of structures, except for those that are located on historic sites as designated by the national or state registers. Does not include non-structural improvements to existing structures, which includes single-family residences, commercial and non-commercial structures. And then it does not include construction or reconstruction of single-family residences that are not situated on a shoreline parcel, or parcels that are impacted by waves, storm surge, high tides, or shoreline erosion. What this does mean, though, is that now single-family residences are considered development if they are on a shoreline parcel or on a non-shoreline parcel that is currently impacted by waves, storm surge, high tide, or shoreline erosion. So that means we have some properties that counties have indicated that are impacted by overtopping sometimes, but they are not necessarily the parcel that is directly on the shoreline. So we did want to include that as a consideration. So what that means is those single family residences are now required to come in for a special management area permit. The other change is the minimum 40-foot shoreline setback, which means that the law no longer allows the reduction of the shoreline setback to less than 40 feet for any of the shoreline parcels, therefore requires a shoreline setback variance for non-minor structures that are located within the shoreline area. Shoreline setback variances may still be granted for the use of an existing shallow shoreline lot, but it will still need to go through the variance process. The definition of beach was defined for the first time in Hawaii state law. The definition of beach was included, worked on this definition with our colleagues at the Office of Conservation and Coastal Lands and UHC grant, where it added a definition such that the beach means a coastal landform composed of sand that is established and shaped by wave action and tidal processes, and includes sand deposits in nearshore submerged areas or sand dunes or upland beach deposits landward of the shoreline that provide benefits for public use and recreation, for coastal ecosystems, and as a natural buffer against coastal hazards. Further beach protection policies include the prohibition of construction of private shoreline hardening structures to protect beaches, as well as minimizing construction of shoreline hardening structures where shoreline hardening structures interfere with existing recreational waterline activities. So what this means is there are no more seawalls or revetments in areas with beaches, according to law. They are prohibited for use for private property owners unless it's clearly in the interest of the general public. What this means is for the interest of general public are public safety and public health concerns, protection of public infrastructure in response to or at the risk of coastal hazards, or for beach protection or sand retention for the public use and recreation, or protection of coastal ecosystems. So those are kind of in summary the changes to state law. These came into effect September of 2020. So it's been about 1 year since the law has been in effect. We are sort of tracking, we've just started sort of tracking kind of the permit activity in general. And I think the other thing that I was asked to speak about is one of the other state laws that was enacted in 2020, which is the sea level rise disclosure law, excuse me, which requires sellers' disclosures for areas that will be impacted by sea level rise within the sea level rise exposure area as designated by the state's Hawaii Climate Mitigation and Adaptation Commission or its successor. So that law is going to come into effect May 1st of 2021, and it will be included in the real estate property transactions standard form. I also wanted to take the opportunity, since I don't join you folks all the time, to share some of the work that we've done this year. In this past legislative session, in 2021, Act 178 was passed, and this is the relating to sea level rise adaptation, which required the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development to coordinate with state agencies who have operational and management responsibilities for facilities to identify those that are impacted by sea level rise and other natural hazards. We are first starting with sea level rise. As we know, natural hazards would probably identify every single structure that we have on this island. So we are focusing our efforts. We've worked with state agencies to create an inventory of their facilities using some existing facilities. We've done some cleanup of data, trying to get some consistency among some of the fields that we've been provided. The intention is that we'll be using that information and overlaying the different SLREXA scenarios of inundation and identifying the numbers of facilities that will be impacted by sea level rise. We do recognize, of course, that the city and county, as well as the other counties, their infrastructure is a key component in sea level rise adaptation, so that is not lost on us. There will be an acknowledgement of that, but this is one start in understanding some of the state assets. Right now, the state DOT infrastructure for highways is not included in that law, but I think you may know already that the DOT has another climate action adaptation plan, and they've done an analysis for vulnerabilities on their infrastructure assets for the highways. So that was passed and became into effect July 1st of this year. The Office of Planning and Sustainable Development is required to submit a report to the legislature, the State Hawaii Climate Adaptation Commission, on an annual basis, 20 days before the start of the legislative session. This is also an unfunded mandate, so we are trying to work that in with some of the other work that we're doing. And I'll want to share that with you as well. From the changes to 205A, which do not allow seawalls for areas with beaches, we recognize that there are challenges to property owners, and there are other adaptation options that are potentially midterm that are not easily accomplished from a single parcel owner. So in response to a lot of the discussions we've had with county planning departments about like parcel to parcel decision making, we're actually currently scoping, there's an RFP that's out right now to do a scoping study for a regional approach to shoreline management. We're just trying to better understand how we might be able to apply the definition of region to Hawaii's unique coastlines, likely using existing geological structures, embayments and headlands, and to better understand how we can apply regional approaches for more midterm and softer solutions for shoreline management. This is just kind of the first step in trying to better understand how we can do that. There are other entities that have done so. We're looking at a model in Cape Cod that has GIS layers of where they've defined regions. And we've been talking with them as well as to how they've accomplished what they've done and how they're applying those regions for land use decisions and shoreline management decisions in their area. California also has some examples, as well as Washington State. So we're working on a project to embark on there. One of the requirements that we have with our federal funding through NOAA is to be evaluated on a regular basis. And one of the feedback that we received last evaluation period was to help to define what cumulative impacts within the special management area would mean. And this has been a pretty sticky, challenging project for us. Cumulative impacts is not easily well defined at any national or local scale. And we are working on developing guidance with the counties that is in a draft form and for intentions for use for our county planning departments. But we are still sort of working on trying to figure out how to very clearly kind of set some guidelines that might be applied for permitting in this area. And we've also started highlighting some of the work that we do directly with the counties through cesium funds on our website. We are trying very hard to improve the way we share the information for the important projects that we're working on. In the chat, I'm going to provide you with a link to some of the work that we've done with the counties, highlighting the differences between each of the counties, their populations, demographics, and compositions, as well as some of the work that we funded to help them comply with 205A. And then the work that we do through the Ocean Resources Management Plan is really how we'll be sharing our information going forward. This is where our focus area 1 for the Ocean Resources Management Plan is addressing development and sea level rise and coastal erosion, and the nexus between both of them and how they're very challenging in regards to our responsibilities for public trust as well. So this is where we'll be housing our future work and some of our current work going forward. I think that's it. I was just asked to provide a very brief update. Sorry, I don't have a presentation, but just thought it would be a little easier to have a conversation.
That was
Any questions?
that was great. Thank you very much, Justine. Could you say a couple of words about the reorganization of the Office of Planning?
Sure. The Office of Planning is now renamed as the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. The former Office of Environmental Quality Control, which used to be housed within the Department of Health, is now housed within OPSD and is renamed as the Environmental Review Program. Their functions are housed under the program, but we still individually, as separate programs, respond to environmental disclosure documents and reviews separately. So they are not doing the responses. Our existing OPSD, XEZM, and Land Use Division and Sustainability Program are responding to EAEIS reviews. So they continue to facilitate the 343 process as well as to support the Environmental Council, which remains intact. The other change is that the Land Use Commission is also attached in the OPSD. They do have a policy firewall between the director and the executive director of the Land Use Commission. But for administrative purposes, are part of the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments? McKenna.
Thanks, Justine, for that update. That was really great. It was good to get sort of the broad scope. And I just wanted to ask, since the changes to 205A have gone into effect, can you reflect on anything that you've sort of seen on the ground that has sort of changed decision-making, examples from across the state or particular to the city and county of Honolulu?
I think particular to city and county of Honolulu, I don't have like hard data right now, but what we see is now we see the development that does occur on shoreline parcels where we did not see those coming in for SMAs before. So for residences, so when somebody wants to demolish and reconstruct or add new structures, they now do have to come to the DPP, and we also provide comments through the 343 process, primarily because of the Chapter 25 requirements for special management use permits that the city and county has in their rules. So we have been able to, through that process, provide awareness to property owners about potential impacts to their property relating to landward migration of their lots and sea level rise as well. There continues to be development and redevelopment on the shoreline. That's a zoning situation, but I think this is an opportunity to at least educate property owners about the risks that they are, embarking on, as well as for those sites that are fronting sandy beaches, their inability to retroactively request a seawall. So very anecdotal, but that's kind of what's going through. There are a lot. I will say I'm sure the DPP is swamped, as well as the council swamped with permits now, though. And I think that's one thing that, that people might need more capacity on, is processing permits to do the things that we want to see on the shoreline. And I think that's going to continue as climate adaptation moves forward in different ways.
Victoria?
Thanks. Thanks, Justine. That was a great presentation. Very informative. I just had one quick clarification about the real estate disclosure law for sea level rise. I think you said that I wanted a clarification on when it goes into effect. I think you said it goes into effect May 1st, 2021, but has it already gone into effect, or 2022?
All right, May 1st, 2022, next year.
Great.
It's supposed to coincide. I think the testimony was that it's the regular updating of some of the forms of the Real Estate Industry Association.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? Do you know how the form will differ from the voluntary disclosure form that the Realtors Association had created?
I don't. I'm not a part of that process and was just tracking the bill primarily. And so I wasn't involved in kind of the navigation through the process.
Thank you.
Other commissioners? Justine, yeah, I want to echo everybody's thoughts. That was a fascinating presentation. Thanks so much. And I enjoyed the conversational style as well. So as you know, we have some really chaotic locations at times. For instance, up on the North Shore of Oahu, we have a lot of houses that have various types of protection and erosion that's threatening the foundation of these homes. Without that protection, we would probably have homes literally tipping onto the beach, tipping forward off the dune bluff onto the beach if there weren't protection there. And the CZM program published a report on managed retreat or strategic retreat. I forget the exact title. Could you just reflect on our continuing need to have what I've referred to as an exit strategy for these homeowners that are in a very, very difficult location? And are there plans for more studies, or just your reflections would be appreciated.
Yeah, we're actually currently drafting a proposal for a grant to take another step towards the legal policy, like the legal policies that are currently in place that might serve as tools to help facilitate managed retreat, and what amendments may need to occur to help facilitate those actions. We're also looking at what potential programs would have to be set up potentially in order to help facilitate those projects through this proposal. We don't have any funds to do a study at this current moment, but we are trying to pursue the next step to better understand how we can facilitate at least the discussions and considerations for retreat into long-term planning. I know that doesn't address the current situations relating to the high risks areas where erosion is really affecting people's property, as you said, in the North Shore, but we are moving to do another study if we get funded.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the public?
I have one, Dr. Fletcher.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Oh, thanks very much. I'm an Ewa Beach resident, and we here are very concerned about a major shoreline hardening project that the Marine Corps has planned, as we've discussed at the commission meetings in the past. My understanding is that their plan didn't undergo a consistency review by the Department of Planning, Coastal Zone Management, office because they were able to invoke the Marine Corps Navy de minimis list, which my understanding is the spirit of that list is to declare stuff de minimis that's happening only on their property. But our concern is, as we know, shoreline hardening impacts adjacent shorelines as well, and there's no boundaries recognized by Mother Nature. And so understanding the spirit of the Marine Corps Navy de minimis list, it seems that something fell through the cracks that allowed shoreline hardening to be a project involving shoreline hardening allowed still the invocation of that list. And I'm wondering what we can do to have that list revisited to specifically exempt shoreline hardening from it, so that situations such as this and projects such as this that happen on shared shorelines with potential impact to the adjacent properties doesn't happen again. Is there a way to exempt shoreline hardening from the Marine Corps Navy de minimis list?
Mike, is this the firing range next to Eva Beach Park?
Yes, it is. Yeah. The steel sheet pile bulkhead that they're going to, the 1,500 to 2,500 feet that they're going to construct parallel to the shoreline right at the high water mark, just slightly above it, so it's technically their property, but it's one continuous littoral cell. It's one long beach from Iroquois Point to 2 miles away or so.
So was that question directed to Justine?
Yes, it was. And specifically the question is it possible for us to exempt shoreline hardening from the Marine Corps Navy de minimis list so that a future plan at least receives a consistency review?
Mike, thank you for your question. Yes, we've been following some of the discussions relating to the concerns over at Eva Beach. I'd have to check and defer to our federal consistency folks. I was not in this position when those de minimis lists were created. And so administratively, I'm not directly familiar with going through the process of amending it or not amending it, as well as those timeframes. So I would have to defer that question for now because I can't authoritatively respond to the question about exempting hardening for future for the Marine Corps list.
Okay, well, thank you, and
Sorry
we sure
about
would appreciate. Well, we sure would appreciate it if you could take a look at it. It's been, I forgot exactly how long it's been since that list has been updated, but if I recall, it's been a significant amount of time, and given all of the changes that we've seen in climate change and shoreline hardening and sea level rise in the state, it seems like we're due to have a review of it. I really appreciate you addressing this. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mike. I want to confirm that, in an era of rising sea level, when you fix the shoreline with a structure, you will lose the beach in front of it eventually. And also a structure like you're describing, any sort of a hard wall, has a effect known as flanking, where unprotected shorelines or unarmored shorelines adjacent to that structure will experience accelerated erosion. So that's called flanking. Any other public comments or questions? All right. Thank you again, Justine. I hope you can stick around. We have another presentation. Maybe there's some questions after that. Although if you hadn't planned on it, that's fine if you can't.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Next item, number 7, and I want to thank the Department of Planning and Permitting. Katia Balasanio is here to give a presentation. She's going to give us an update on revisions to the city's shoreline management regulations. And she is the chief of the Land Use Permits Division from Honolulu Department of Planning and Permitting. Katia, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Fletcher. Thank you for having me here today, and thank you, commissioners, for the invitation. I also have a few of my colleagues with me, Liz Krieger and Christy Keller, Steve Tagawa, and Nelson Armitage from the DPP. As I think I've had shared with you, I want to say 2 years ago now, we've been working on updates to chapters 23 and 25, our shoreline setback regulations and special management area regulations for some time now. Justine talked about unfunded mandates. Well, we've been doing this on our own as well. We've had no funding by the city, so we created an internal working group, which includes a few of you, as well as folks from Sea Grant and Office of Climate Change and Sustainability and Resilience, and have been trying to move ahead with revisions to chapters 23 and 25 that basically implement that which we've been hearing from our policymakers, which includes you folks. So within our regional development and sustainable community plans, there's guidance in regards to how to better deal with shorelines. The OCCSR has incorporated proposals for updating chapters 23 and 25 in their Oahu resilience strategy, as well as Climate Ready Oahu. You folks put out a very detailed sea level rise guidance and shoreline setback report, which also specifies how our regulations should be improved. And Sea Grant has been talking up a storm with all of their presentations to community folks. All of these various efforts went through some significant outreach, and basically, I think collectively we're hearing the community calling for stronger regulations that protect our beaches. Justine went into great detail in regards to what Act 16 2020 was supposed to do. And so our proposed revisions are intended to address Act 16. They're also supposed to use an erosion rate based setback for certain parcels on Oahu, certain areas and regions. And we're also looking to provide some flexibility for those located on shallow lots. Those are the primary purpose of our revisions, and we'll also be making some housekeeping changes based on our experience over the years implementing our existing regulations. Before I get into some of the details, I thought I might answer specifically some of the questions that were asked of Justine in regards to how Act 16 impacted us, because we are certainly seeing an increase in the number of shoreline, well, not shoreline variances, but rather special management area applications. In all of last year, all of calendar year 2020, we received 53 applications, SMA permit applications, minor as well as major. And in this year, up to here, we are at the end of November, we've already received 75 applications. So that's a vast increase, and that does not speak to the number of building permits that we need to review, because, excuse me, they also involve shoreline issues. And so we are now taking over the review of those permits. And I'd say we get about 5 of them a week to see whether a fence, a wall, an addition, anything is going to be impacted by the changes to Act 16. So we are, quite frankly, just about overwhelmed with the quantity of work that is before us. And of course, you've heard that DPP, as well as other city agencies, have a tremendous vacancy rate of about 25 to 30%. So staff are fairly busy these days. We've tried to put new procedures into place that help both the public as well as staff. For example, we now have an SMA determination form so that people can, get guidance in advance in regards to whether they are or are not located in the SMA and how that might impact their building plans. So, we have new tools, we have lots of new responsibilities. We've just recently hired a person, Nelson, who's on the call, who will be serving as our coastal zone manager. We thank OCCSR for getting FEMA funds to pay for this position. We hope that he'll be on board for at least a year and a half. And the DPP is also looking at going to council to request an entire new branch to assist with permitting within the SMA and near the shoreline, because it's, not only are the regulations warranting it, but, the public is, asking for, greater attention to this area. So, and of course, we know that there are plenty of other things that need to be done beyond updating chapters 23 and 25. You asked about managed retreat. We are also in the process of updating our zoning code and are including a permit that will allow for the transfer of development rights, Mauka, away from the shoreline. So that is one additional thing that we're trying to do, to put into place. And we're also trying to encourage greater density in those areas that can handle it. So very specifically, we're going to go to the Planning Commission tomorrow and recommend that housing be allowed in business zones above the commercial ground floor activity. So, try to create additional housing, created in the right place, and ideally further away from those special management areas and sensitive, environmental areas. So we've got a lot in play right now, and we hope to be submitting the revisions to chapters 23 and 25 to council fairly soon. We are going to certainly make those revisions to ensure consistency with Act 16, although of course we are already implementing Act 16, but we need for our regulations to reflect those changes. So we're going to be recommending that the coastal hazards definition includes hurricanes, wind, storm surge, high tide, and sea level rise. The protected beach areas will include coastal dunes and coral reefs. We have already strong prohibitions against shoreline hardening. They will become stronger. The setbacks, as Justine discussed, they may be no less than 40 feet as opposed to what they were previously, 20 feet. And the SMA permits are required for the construction and reconstruction of homes, regardless of their size, on shoreline lots or lots impacted by waves, storm surge, high tide, or shoreline erosion. In regards to the setbacks themselves, currently our setbacks are 40 feet from the regulatory shoreline or 60 feet after a subdivision action. So we're looking now at a proposed shoreline setback of 60 feet for properties along the highly urbanized and densely developed South Shore primary urban center area. And then 60 feet plus 70 times the annual coastal erosion rate, up to a maximum setback of 125 feet outside of the primary urban center. And then for those properties that do not have erosion data, or for lots that show zero erosion or accretion, they too will have a 60-foot setback outside of the PUC. In regards to the lots that are particularly shallow, we're taking the lead from Kauai in this regard, as we did with the erosion based formulas. We're going to reduce the short setback just enough to ensure that there's a 1,500 square foot buildable area. But we will be requiring that that structure be placed as in the farthest Mauka location on a lot, and maintain the minimum setback of 60 feet. We'll also be finally clarifying definitions for repair, reconstruction. We've gotten Justine's message in regards to cumulative and significant effects, and hope to be including definitions for that as well. We will no longer allow any exceptions for public hearings. The public has come out fairly strong on this matter. And we're also not going to allow the concurrent processing of SMA permits with environmental disclosure documents. I think that is about it in regards to chapters 23 and 25 and some other revisions that we're contemplating elsewhere in our ordinances. What I failed to do is show you the nifty images that OCCSR has been producing for us, but I think that we can share them at some later date when we actually forward the staff report and draft ordinance changes to you folks. But again, I do want to thank OCCSR for being a great partner in all of this, and look forward to continuing to work with all of you towards a stronger regulatory framework. Any questions?
Thank you, Katia. Commissioners? McKenna?
Thanks, Katya. That was a really great update. You guys are doing so much. I have a couple of questions. The one, and actually some of them might be for sort of both you and Justine, if I can ask you to pop back on, Justine, as well. But first, Katya, for you, can you talk a little bit more about the transfer of development rights mechanism and how you see that functioning?
Sure. It's a, I'm not sure if you folks, all of you know too much about it, but the way it works usually is that there's a neutral broker that allows, that encourages and facilitates the redevelopment or development of property in an area where it is wanted and away from the area that it's not wanted. So you have a donor lot and you have a receiving lot. And the receiving lot is where the city would want some higher density. And the donor lots would be those that are located within the SMA or preservation areas. And we will not have that kind of neutral broker in place right now, and hopefully that is something that could be developed over time. However, the way that we're trying to structure it is with a conditional use permit, a person would be able to will be able to transfer the existing density that they have in the SMA to an area that is located outside of the SMA. So if you can build one house in the SMA currently, you would be able to transfer that density to another lot outside of the SMA. So it's a bare bones type program at this point with a fairly small incentive involved, but we're just trying to create a structure that might become more robust in the future. And we're hoping that there could be an organization that steps up and becomes an advocate and a facilitator of this. Right now, it's a permit-driven activity, and it might not take off immediately, but we're thinking that we're laying the groundwork for this, and I think additional research will need to be done. And I suspect that this is the kind of thing that Justine and Office of Planning is interested in pursuing. So given that we're going to the council with a change to our zoning code within the next, we're going to the Planning Commission tomorrow, and from there it goes to council. So we have an opportunity now to create this kind of program, and so that's what we're going to do.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Yeah, thanks for that. My question for both of you is about, in either the updates and the updated definition of beaches in 205A, as well as the proposed amendments to 23 and 25, is there any ability to sort of differentiate the ecological integrity and quality of beaches? I asked because, a lot of times we get questions around, there's all of these beach interventions happening in an area like Waikiki, which is a highly engineered beach, a highly engineered environment, versus places that are still relatively natural shorelines. So yeah, I'll stop there.
From a permitting perspective, we definitely take the types of soils into account. And I think that we do that not just for the preservation of beaches, but also to ask in regards to, cultural and historic sites, any archaeological issues, whether folks are going to find EV when they dig. I don't think your question spoke to that, but it's one major reason why we ask about the soil and comment on it, as well as permeability for stormwater recharge, as well as recreational access to the beaches. But that said, we don't necessarily have an engineer that is assisting with the review of the actual organic material itself to provide more site-specific guidance.
Thank you, Katya. Justine, what about from the state side? Is there sort of any differentiation amongst beaches in that way?
It's not as it's currently written in the law.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thanks, McKenna. Other commissioners? Yeah, Melanie.
Hi, Katya. Thank you for your excellent sort of update from the city. I just actually had a question which kind of spurred by McKenna's regarding this sort of transfer of land. Has the city started to look at how this development might impact sort of the form and the imagery of those communities, right? When you think about sort of transfer of density. because I'm just kind of sort of curious from a form-based perspective how that might look, or if that's just an evolution of the process and something that maybe an outside group can assist with.
We have, certainly started looking at how this would impact existing communities, and have come to the conclusion that the fairly low level of incentive at this point in time would not have an adverse impact on existing neighborhoods in general. However, given that this would require a conditional use permit, we would have an opportunity to take a closer look on a case-by-case basis. We also have such a transfer of development rights already in place for historic structures, and have not been asked to use that frequently. However, we do see both of those as an opportunity to, preserve on one hand a historic structure and on the other a sensitive environmental area. So we think it's a step in the right direction, and we'll just have to see how many folks really wish to take advantage of that.
Great, thanks.
Any comments or questions from the public? Nancy?
Hi, aloha. Thank you, Katya and Justine. Super informative, really helpful. And you've been very busy doing a lot with not enough resources. So my question is about resources. Katya mentioned getting help from OPCZM to get some FEMA funding for, was it for a CZM manager? And then my question is the city receiving any CZM funding yet? Does OPCZM have to request additional funding from NOAA for expansion of CZM funded county planner positions? Because it seems like this Act 16 is really like, it's the permit volume is just going to keep growing. Thank you.
Well,
You want to take that one?
we got to do this dance over and over again, Justine. But you know what? I think it's actually a very important discussion, and we can never let it go. So, just clarification, Nancy, the money is coming from OCCSR, not OP. And I'll let Justine explain why.
Certainly. So we are currently unable to fund the city and county for a position right now. Programmatically, our funding, yes, we would have to request an increase, but it wouldn't directly be to NOAA, it would be to Congress, and those increases cannot be directed specifically for a state. We do receive our funding based on weighted allocations based on miles of shoreline. We have, since 2018, received small incremental increases over time. Previously, it was quite flat in terms of our funding and really stretching our budgets as collective bargaining unit increases affected the budget as well for personnel. The CZM budget funds the staff in my office that work to meet our federal mandates as well as our state law and execute the state law, and also funds 14 positions in the other counties. Right now, in order to accommodate one position, we've done some calculations, and we're not able to do that without affecting all of the other counties in terms of each of them equitably losing, we cannot do it equitably without each of them losing a position themselves. We have, DPP has been participating to the extent that they possibly can due to their busy schedules with the Ocean Resources Management Plan meetings that we hold, as well as county planning department meetings on a monthly basis. But we do recognize that they are stretched. We have, from time to time, as funds are available, provided project funding, which we know is not a consistent funding mechanism for the capacity needs that they need. But we do recognize that we are working towards it, and we have included that in our reporting to NOAA so that they can pass it on and move up. But that continues to be a challenge.
So Honolulu is not a member of CZM in that formal sense, and where the other counties get 14 folks to work for them, Honolulu doesn't get anyone. So it's bizarre, but that's just what it is. And, you know, Justine and I and our staff, we continue to work together and try to do the right thing. And but it's certainly a strange situation.
Other comments from the public or questions? McKenna?
Sorry, what would it take to remedy that, to bring Oahu into the CZM program?
I think so. Kati's right. So the CZM program, as approved by NOAA, is considered a network program, which means that to fulfill the objectives and policies of 205A, it is functional agencies such as the counties, DLNR, Clean Water Branch, et cetera. Their regulations and statutes that uphold these objectives and policies. So in that way, shoreline setback and SMA rules and ordinances are part of the formal network, but we do not have a contractual obligation right now with DPP for personnel. So I just want to put that as a little bit of a distinction. And without getting into the history of how this changed in the past with the previous decisions, we would have to get a fairly significant and consistent federal increase for a position, because that would mean fringe as well as a salary, as well as salary. So when you get a 2% increase, that doesn't cover those costs budgetarily.
Any other comments or questions? Nancy?
Chip, I just had one more. With these massive bills that have just recently been passed, with 2.8 billion coming to the state of Hawaii, is there any chance that a little bit of that money can be carved out? I know that it can't be for, ongoing positions, but it'd be really great to give the city a sort of a jump start to cope with this situation.
Maybe Matt has a comment.
In terms of the funding that was just subscribed through the infrastructure bill, and obviously the Build Back Better bill and act is not finalized yet. There's still just a lot of questions. Even within the federal agencies, they're not quite sure yet how they will receive nor deploy the monies, and what things will be coming either directly to the state, what things will be potential direct access to the counties or competitive opportunities. We know competition across grants is also not the preferred, and can be quite cumbersome and challenging in and of itself. So the short answer is we don't know, Nancy, at this point. And I don't imagine anything within the infrastructure bill would address the question and the discussion that we're having right now. Or frankly, the Build Back Better Act.
Katia, I may have missed it. Are there going to be any changes proposed for granting variances in Chapter 23?
I think I guess I'd like to use the opportunity to say that I know that there's there have been a number of articles published in regards to DPP and the variances that we've been issuing, but I think some of them don't really capture the true story. We've taken a look at the variances that we have approved, and there were 22 since 1995, of which 4 received partial approval. So, you know, there are a vast number of hardening structures out there, but the great majority were approved prior to, you know, long ago, prior to the CZM regulations, or at least the current ones, being in place. So I feel like DPP has gotten a bit of a bad rap in that regard, as if we're, you know, handing out variances like candy. They are very difficult to obtain, and there's a lot of thought that goes into them, and they are usually associated with a, you know, particularly odd situation that needs to be rectified. In regards to the other changes, I think the clarifications that I talked about, and certainly the new erosion rate based setback is a major change to Chapter 23.
Thank you. And I placed in the chat a link to a senior research thesis by Corey Wong in the Global Environmental Science Program, Oceanography Department at UH Manoa. And McKenna, I think you served on that, on his committee as well, didn't you? Yeah, thank you. Anyway, that's available online. McKenna?
I know we're sort of going back to commissioner questions, which is out of order, but Katya, can I ask you a follow-up question in regards to that good point? So I know you mentioned in your testimony that you were making amendments to things like repairs as well of hardened structures. So to your point, much of the hardening is actually quite, it's been on the beach for several decades now. And so repairs are the big deal in terms of their continuation. Can you expand a little bit more on what you're proposing there?
Well, I think I'll just read it. How about I do that rather than try to summarize it? I mean, of course, we've been dealing with repairs and reconstruction for many years, and the question always is, well, what does that mean, and where's that fine line between one and the next? And also, I encourage my colleagues who are on the line to step in and jump in and support here. But repair would mean renovating or fixing ordinary damage to a structure where the cost thereof is valued by a licensed professional engineer or architect at less than 50% of the current replacement cost of the structure. Repairs do not enlarge, add to, or expand the structure, increase the size or degree of the nonconformity, or intensify the use of the structure or its impact on coastal processes. And in contrast, reconstruction means rebuilding a lawfully established structure when the reconstruction is valued by a licensed professional engineer or architect at 50% or more of the current replacement cost of the structure, or where significant portions of the structure are proposed to be replaced, including exterior walls, support beams, floors, ceilings, and the foundation. Those definitions are primarily intended to assist with permit processing, as we've done over all of these years, and just trying to answer questions that continue to arise.
Can Katya, I can jump in for a second to add one other thing. This
Thanks,
is
Liz.
Yeah, no problem. This is Liz Krieger. I am the Zoning Regulations and Permits Branch Chief. One other proposed change that we're making to this section in Chapter 23 regarding non-conforming structures is to add a time period over which the cumulative replacement cost is measured. So at the moment, the code is silent about when, like within what period a 50% replacement value can occur. And we're proposing to add that it be over a period of 10 years so that you cannot do something like repair your seawall this year, repair half of your seawall this year, and then repair the other half of your seawall next year, and essentially incrementally replace the whole thing. So the combination of the definitions that Katya just read, along with this addition of a time period over which we'll be tracking those costs, we believe that that will diminish the likelihood that people are doing that. Of course, in practice, these seawalls are so like astronomically expensive that people we don't have people doing this all that much anymore, where they're not coming in so much to say like, oh, I'm going to do this repair, because they're finding that even basic repairs are, you know, on the order of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So anyway, that's otherwise the Act 16 changes didn't really affect how the non-conforming structures section is written in Chapter 205A. So that's all.
Thank you, Liz. Thanks, Katya.
Katya, is there any time frame on the possibility of a new setback that you mentioned, rolling that out?
It's always 2 weeks. It's always in 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, in 2 months, in 2 weeks.
That's kind of like the cure for diabetes. It's always next year.
No, I think this time we're really close. I think this meeting is the first time we're rolling out the specifics associated with this program. We've done a tremendous amount of outreach. I think all of the various entities that have been involved in this have been doing a super amount of outreach, and that's been necessary to kind of pave the way for what is ahead. But we've been, you know, tripped up for a variety of reasons. But because, you know, we're now rolling it out, I think that, you know, within the next 2 weeks, we need to finish up the images that are going to be used in the report, but it should be submitted to council before the end of this year. And then we're looking at probably an effective date of a year from now in order to give property owners some time to prepare, adjust, bring certain proposals that are already in play to completion. So we've found in the past that, you know, giving people a bit of an opportunity to prepare for changes makes it easier for council to adopt the revisions, but before the end of the year.
Thanks.
And we look forward to you testifying in support of this bill.
I look forward to it also.
Great.
Any more public comments or questions? All right. Katya and Justine, I really want to thank you for your time today. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right. I think I'm up next here. Item number 8. Updates to the COP. I will begin by saying you cannot really understand a UN Framework Convention on Climate Change annual meeting until you attend it. there was an exclusive blue zone that had 40,000 people in it. A new definition to the word exclusive. And there were another 100,000 people trying to get into it, but what they had available to them was known as the green zone. So in the blue zone, where I was lucky to get access, there was a pavilion area where every nation on Earth, plus lots and lots of NGOs, set up basically 2 or 3 walls, an open area the size of maybe 100 square feet, maybe twice that, and then a couple of chairs for a panel, and then maybe half a dozen or a dozen chairs for an audience. And then there were panels after panels after panels going on simultaneously on human equity, indigenous rights, the Brazilian rainforest, Congo plans. I mean, it was just amazing smorgasbord of information. And it wasn't until the second week that I realized there was a whole nother area where the climate negotiators were meeting, and you could go to a large seating area and hear their report outs every day on what the actual negotiations consisted of. And that's where all the press was, and it was truly amazing. And during all that, several things came to light. One is the Washington Post reported a study that they did on underreporting of emissions. As much as 23% of total greenhouse gas emissions globally are underreported. Perhaps as much as 8.5 to 13 billion tons of CO2 equivalent emissions are not reported. And also, there was an addendum published to the annual UN emission gap report. And that's a report that every year the United Nations Environmental Program publishes on the emissions gap between what global emissions need to currently be in order to be on track to stop warming at 1.5 degrees C, and what global emissions actually are. And that is a gap. And this addendum identified that current policies, not promises, but policies exercised by governments, put us on a pathway to 2.8 degrees C of global warming at a 2/3 probability, a 66% probability based on actual policies. National pledges or promises leading up to and during the COP, which countries have not been very good at adhering to, put the warming at a 2/3 probability between 1.9 and 2.1 degrees C. So the promises have actually hit the 2 degrees C target, which was one of the targets in the 2015 Paris Climate Accord. So all of this is rolling out at the same time that we were hearing national pledges and agreements on slowing deforestation by the end of this century, and ramping down, but not completely eliminating the use of coal, and lots of other information. I sort of summarized my thoughts in a essay that I published in the Hill that I'll put in the chat there, that basically we have climate negotiators representing every country that are operating under the rule of thumb that the UN has established, that every nation must agree to any agreements, any pacts. And so it's automatically a process of compromise. And yet we are talking about the safety of us and our children and our grandchildren. And, compromise and safety, in my mind, just don't go together very well. But it's the process we have. Yeah, so those are my thoughts. The next COP is in Egypt, and I'm planning on attending. It was a great learning experience. And I see Amanda Ellis is on with us today. Amanda, did you want to add anything? All right. And you may have seen in Civil Beat, the governor and a group from Suzanne Case and some other folks from the state. Anu Hiddle published a piece in Civil Beat about the governor's experience there, and he was a real superstar. At a meeting of sort of state level, regional level leaders, that was titled something to the effect of net zero by 2050. He stood up and said, that's not good enough. It needs to be net negative, which is the guideline that is established in law for the state of Hawaii. And so he generated headlines around the world. All right, so those are my thoughts about the COP. Any comments or questions? Alrighty. Public input for matters not on the agenda. The floor is open to the public. All right. And our next meeting date, does anybody have that handy? I've got December 17th at 9 a.m. Can we get that confirmed? Victoria is nodding in agreement.
I have on my calendar.
Okay, so December 17th at 9 a.m. Any announcements? All right. Guys ready for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Rosie. All right. And apparently we don't need to vote on it. We can just do it. So thanks, everybody. The meeting's adjourned. Gavel down. Bam.